Welcome to the Project Management Prepcast, helping you prepare for the PMP exam. Here's your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner.
Hello and welcome back to part 2 of the Manage Project Team Process Review, where we'll not only take you to the PMP exam, no, our lessons also benefit you long after you take your exam. I'm your instructor, Cornelius Fichtner. So, in part 1 you saw the overview and we discussed all the inputs. We will now continue with the discussion of the tools, techniques, outputs and a review, and we even have sample exam questions for you at the end as well. And here they are, our 4 tools and techniques that we are going to be reviewing. Observation and conversation is the first. Project performance appraisals are next. Conflict management third, and then lastly we have interpersonal skills. And yikes, you might look at these and think, oh gosh, these are soft skills, and you would be absolutely right. Most of these are indeed soft skills. We begin with observation and conversation. This tool and technique is all about paying attention and talking to your team members. You could ask things like, how are you doing? With this open-ended question, you are telling your team member that it's okay to open up to you. Or you could say, how's the project going for you? Asking not just about the project, but focusing on the you, focusing on the individual makes the communication so much more personal. Or you could ask, how is the work going for you? Another open-ended and very neutral question encourages your team member to speak their mind. Or, are there any major problems? Individuals are very different, and some may hesitate to highlight major issues of which you should be made aware of. How much time do you need to finish your assignment? Could be a question you ask. This will help you get a sense of the individual and whether they're working at the pace that was originally planned. Or you could ask a very important question. Where do you need my support? This goes hand in hand with the prior question. Some people don't like asking for help, so you should bring this up in your conversation and ask them outright. By discussing these kind of questions with the team members, the project management team can assess the project morale and also learn how the project is progressing. They will also learn of successes and possible interpersonal issues. And by the way, did you notice that I used the term project management team in the explanation just now? That was intentional. It's not necessarily just you, the project manager, who goes around talking, but everyone who is part of the project management team has this responsibility. The responsibility of talking to your team is shared among the project management team members. But you should not only ask project team members how they're doing, you should also observe them. Observation is a technique that provides a direct way of viewing individuals in their environment, performing their jobs or tasks and carrying out processes. So really, take a close look at your team members as they actually perform the work. You'll observe behavior. How do they relate amongst each other? What is the stress level? You'll observe action. Do they escalate problems early or wait until the last moment? How do they act towards the customer? You'll see their interest. Do they participate in meetings? Do they listen well? And you will learn about their commitment. Are they responsive to emails, or do you have to remind them about a question or a request? Are they focused on the work or constantly distracted by texts or side conversations which are not relevant to the work at hand? These observations will also give you valuable insight into the health of your team. They will allow you to better understand the team dynamics, learn where problems or weak spots may be, and help you make changes to create an improved environment to help them succeed. Remember, the project team will make the project a success, and you have to do everything to provide room to succeed. Project performance appraisals are our next tool and technique, and most of us have no problem giving good appraisals, but we do have issues mostly when delivering bad performance appraisals, that's when you really need strong personal skills and communication skills, but that aspect is not really part of the PMP exam. What may be part of it, however, is the fact that your project may or may not have such project performance appraisals. The size of your project, its duration, or your company policies will define if such project performance appraisals are needed. And please note that they are called project performance appraisals. Only give feedback on the work the team members did on the project, especially if your team is part of a matrix organization. You should concentrate your appraisals on their performance on your project only. The most common form of such feedback is, of course, direct feedback, the one that you receive from your supervisors, or in our case here, the one that you will give directly to your project team members. But there is also the 360-degree feedback, which means you get feedback from all around you. This means that your supervisor, your colleagues, and your direct reports give you feedback in an anonymous way. It may even include the customer. That way you receive feedback from the top, bottom, left and right. Why do we do such performance appraisals? Well, you know how it goes on projects. You don't really take the time for this kind of administrative work because you have a deadline. It's hectic, it's crazy, but by scheduling these appraisals, you ensure that you treat your team fairly and give them the feedback that they deserve. It's also an opportunity to define training needs or change someone's role. As an example, you can move someone up from a junior engineer to a senior engineer. It's also an opportunity for the team member to bring up issues and concerns that they may have. And hey, they may even give you some feedback as well. Our next tool and technique here in Manage Project Team has to do with the drama of project management. It is conflict management. Let's review first a few basics before we go into more details. Well, first of all, as the project manager, you are not responsible to resolve the conflict. The project team members involved in a conflict are responsible to resolve their own issues. If the conflict escalates, then the project manager should facilitate, take the team members aside into a private conversation and help out. Use a direct approach. If the conflict cannot be resolved in this fashion, there comes a moment when you as the project manager have to use your corporate policies to formally address the issues, maybe even follow up with disciplinary actions. It is, however, most important to not let it get that far. Conflicts should be addressed early and proactively. If there is conflict and drama on the project, then, well, your role in a way is to be the director. You have to rise above the emotions and direct yourself and your team forward. And to help you do this, there are 5 general techniques for conflict resolution that you must become familiar with. These are collaborate or problem solve, compromise or reconcile, smooth or accommodate, force or direct, and finally withdraw or avoid. And now let's go ahead and take a look into each of these 5 techniques one by one and discuss when to best use them. The first conflict resolution technique is known as collaborate or problem solve. Here, everyone can have their truth and still come to an agreement. Participants need only agree on arrangements for the future, not the past nor the reason why. People in conflict may frequently share much common ground. Collaboration can bring this to light and lead to a beneficial solution for all parties. Collaborating should be used when you can develop options together. When you want to integrate multiple viewpoints, it's important to have everyone on board and committed, and when you need consensus and not compromise. As you know, the different parties may not always want to cooperate in this way, so we have other techniques up our sleeve. The second technique is known as either compromise or reconcile. It's also described as a give and take style. Conflicting parties, they bargain to reach a mutually acceptable solution. Compromising should be used when both parties need to win, when you are in a deadlock, and when time is not sufficient. The important thing is that both parties agree to how to proceed. Usually it means giving up something in order to reach a decision and leaving with some degree of satisfaction. This can also be used when you want to maintain the relationship among the involved parties, when you get nothing if you do not compromise, or when your stakes are quite moderate. As you compromise and reconcile, you get some partial or temporary solution to the conflict. Then we have the technique of smooth or accommodate. This is also referred to as an obliging style. In this approach, the areas of agreement are emphasized and the areas of disagreement are downplayed. Conflicts are not always resolved in the smoothing mode. A party may sacrifice its own concerns or goals in order to satisfy the concerns or goals of the other parties. Smoothing should be used when the goal that can be reached is overarching, when you want to create an obligation for a trade-off at a later time, when the stakes are low, and when the liability is limited. You can also use this when any solution really is adequate, when you want to be harmonious and when you want to create goodwill. When you see, well, I'm going to lose anyway, might as well go with this, or when you just simply want to gain time. Your acquiescing may not work all the time. Thus, we get into the next technique when we effectively make the other party acquiesce. And this is then called force or direct. It is also known as a competing, controlling, or dominating style. Forcing occurs when one party goes all out to win its position while ignoring the needs and concerns of the other party. As the intensity of a conflict increases, the tendency for a forced conflict is more likely. This results in a win-lose situation where one party wins at the expense of the other party, and forcing should be used when a do-or-die situation is present, when stakes are really, really high, or when important principles are at stake, when relationships among the parties are not really that important. I'm just going to force my will onto you and we're going to get through this, or when a quick decision must be made. As you can see, this is almost a tool and technique of last resort. You're forcing your will on the other party. You probably do not like it when someone else forces your hand, so do use this method carefully. And then finally, we have the technique of withdraw or avoid. This is viewed as postponing an issue for later, or withdrawing from the situation altogether. Withdrawing or avoiding should be used when you cannot win and the stakes are low, when stakes may be high, but you are not prepared yet to move on to another of the conflict resolution techniques. So you withdraw, you avoid the conflict, you go away, you wait for 48 hours, and then you come back. You can also use this when you want to maintain neutrality or reputation. When you think a problem will go away, if we just wait for 48 hours, it'll be going away on its own and we don't have to do anything. Or you win by delaying. You just say, well, if I wait for 48 hours, then the pressure on the other side becomes so high they will agree to what I want. Withdraw and avoid is regarded as a temporary solution because the problem and conflict, they continue to reoccur over time and over again. You're just not dealing with it. But this may buy you time or allow others to resolve the conflict for you. Before we move on to our final tool and technique, let me not forget to put emphasis on the fact that team members may have dual reporting relationships. By this, I mean that project team members may be reporting to you as the project manager as well as their line manager for their daily duties. This kind of dual reporting relationship is, as you probably know, very normal in a matrix organization. Managing this dual reporting relationship is your job. Yes, this is the job of the project manager, and it is important. Only if this is managed correctly, and only if you and the line manager have a clear understanding of the resource assignments and what percentage they are working for you, will the team member be able to balance both their duties to the line manager and their duties to the project. It is a critical success factor. The interpersonal skills are a final tool and technique. They allow you to harness the talents and strengths of your project team members in the areas of leadership, influencing, effective decision-making, and communication. So there are many styles and models and theories of leadership. Some may better suit your personality, the projects and the people that you manage, and situations that you face. Ultimately, what is usually required is that you are able to communicate and convince your project team to perform. And speaking of convince, influence is important and can be challenging. You may be working in a functional organization or matrix environment where, as a project manager, you may not have as much power within your project or with stakeholders outside of the project. Yet, you have to be able to persuade them to accept your point of view. And this involves being able to decide which information is relevant and then to use it to go through a logical and timely decision-making process. Decisions should achieve the goal in mind while managing any risks involved. And the final interpersonal skill here, communication, this is a key skill required to do any of the above, and means not only talking but also requires truly listening to team members. There is an entire knowledge area devoted to project communications management after all. When it comes to the outputs, there's nothing really surprising here in the manage project team process. We have change requests, project management plan updates, project document updates, enterprise environmental factor updates, and organizational process asset updates. And of course, if I say there's nothing really surprising here, the more interesting question is, of course, then what are these outputs and why are they created as part of this process? However, having change requests as a result of the managed project team process does seem odd, doesn't it? I mean, we're dealing with people and behavior here. We can't change these by issuing a change request. So what exactly are we doing? Well, the change requests address changes on your team that affect the project. For instance, if an important senior resource sends in her letter of resignation and leaves your team, well, your project is going to take a hit. Your schedule will probably need to change. You will need more time. So you are going to have to put in a change request to have the schedule changed, extended accordingly. And very often when we talk about change requests, I ask this question here, so you should know about this. To which process do we hand off our change requests? So we create a change request here, and then we give it to whom? Who's going to take care of this? Yes, we hand them off to the Perform Integrated Change Control process. Of course, we look at this one in the Project Integration Management lessons and module. We note that change requests come from so many other sources, not just this process here, manage project team. For example, they usually are a result of most controlling processes like controlling cost, schedule, risk, quality, communications, or procurement. When it comes to the reasons for creating change requests, there are other related areas apart from a senior resource member leaving the team when we need to issue a change request. So there may be changes to the team itself, like that senior resource leaving. Maybe somebody needs more training. Someone is taking on new work packages. Maybe you find that additional resources are needed. Or maybe there is a disciplinary action that needs to be enforced. And these staffing changes, they can also lead to changes in responsibility, outsourcing work, or hiring somebody new. These could be for whatever the situation requires, and for these we will have to issue a change request as well. And what about if during the process of managing your project team, you learn about team issues that may affect the project in the future? Well, we have to do something about it, right? Well, yes, the saying, a stitch in time saves 9, really does apply here. After all, remember that a good project manager is a proactive project manager. We never wait until the last moment to address an issue. We address the issue as early as possible. So let's issue a change request for a preventive action. For instance, if you know that your senior engineer will be going on maternity leave, you will probably start cross-training other engineers on your team to mitigate her absence. The list of preventive actions is endless and very much dependent on your project. And that's it for the review of our first output. The next 4 outputs that we have listed in the PMBOK guide are all about updating things. So let's take a look at what needs to be updated and why. The first item that we want to update is the project management plan. This is a direct result from our change requests here. Remember that the change requests which we issue could mean updating staffing needs and processes that are described in our project management plan. Next, there are project document updates. For example, the issues log, role descriptions, or staff assignments may need to be changed. The enterprise environmental factors that we want to update are, of course, all those personnel-related items. Remember that we observe people in this process, so we can make skill assessments. And if your company has a documented skill pool, well, then you should update these if your team develops new skills. And when we talk about updates to the organizational process assets, they focus on the processes, templates, and lessons learned. By this we mean that, first of all, because you perform these processes on your project, you may find that some area of the processes, policies, and templates are outdated, so you update them. Next, you also have an obligation to do a lessons learned review, and you can facilitate this by documenting your organizational chart and updating personnel files, keeping issues and resolutions documented, writing down your team's ground rules, and so on. We also have what was mentioned earlier about how you can provide information on your project and your accomplishments through the organization's newsletters or website. Those need to be documented as well. And with that, we have completed our discussion of the outputs of the Manage Project Team process. So let's review. Managing the project team is the job of the project management team. In the Manage Project Team process, this project management team, with you as the project manager at its head, you observe how the team behaves. You manage conflict by facilitating a resolution. You resolve issues and you appraise the project team's performance. As you are doing this, you can make changes. For example, change the staff. This means submitting change requests, updating the Human Resources Management Plan, which is part of the overall project management plan, and other documents are updated. It also means enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets may be updated. And here is a sample PMP exam question that you may find online on a website. The question is, which of the following regarding conflict is correct? And as possible answers, you may have A, conflict does not exist on every project. B, it is unimportant for the project manager to effectively manage conflict. Answer C, a conflict may be a result of creative thinking. Answer D, conflict is always considered a negative thing on a project. Or answer E, confronting is considered as an effective conflict resolution technique. So, which one is it? The answer is that C is correct. A conflict may be a result of creative thinking because the contemporary perception of conflicts is such that they are good for the project and they enhance creative thinking. However, if they are not managed and controlled, conflicts can lead to disasters. By the way, have you noticed that this question here has 5 answers and not just 4? This is actually wrong, and we did this again on purpose. Questions on the PMP exam only have 4 answers: A, B, C, and D. If you find questions anywhere on the internet that show 5 answers, then you know I have found sample exam questions that are bad and incorrect. So make sure that you get your sample PMP exam questions from a reputable source who knows what they are doing. When it comes to a specific study focus in regards to human resources management and the PMP exam, we have 3 suggestions for you. First of all, you have to know the differences among the inputs, tools, techniques, and outputs for this process. Not especially what they are, so you don't have to have the complete list in your head, but you have to be able to know where they're coming from, what they are used, and why we use them, and how they are applied. You have to be familiar, very familiar, with the 5 resolution techniques for conflict management. Know what they are and under which situation to best use them. And you must understand the interrelationships of manage project team with other processes. For example, how outputs of other human resource processes feed into the manage project team process, or how outputs of this process are then handed off to other processes, as in the case of change requests. And this concludes our look at the manage project team process. So Justine and I say goodbye. Well, to be precise, Justine says,
Have a nice day.
And I say, until next time.